The November wind came down from the mountains like a living thing, cold and sharp and relentless. It rattled the windows of the cabin on Whispering Pines Lake, pressed against the glass, testing for weakness. Inside, Elena Stone sat at her drafting table, one hand resting on her swollen belly, the other moving a watercolor brush across paper with practiced precision. 8 months pregnant, 8 months of carrying new life, while her husband carried a
I don't
rifle
know if I can
8,000
do
miles
this.
away. The
You can.
illustration,
I'm
taking
here.
shape beneath her
Promise?
I
brush,
promise.
showed a small rabbit standing before a wolf. Not running, not cowering, just standing. It was for a children's book about courage, about how bravery wasn't the absence of fear, but the choice to stand when everything in you screamed to run. Elena paused, felt the baby kick. Strong kicks. Garrett would have smiled at that, would have pressed his hand to her belly and made some joke about their daughter already having a SEAL's fighting spirit. But Garrett was in Eastern Europe, had been for 3 months now, with 2 weeks of pre-deployment training before that. He'd kissed her goodbye when she was 5 months pregnant, promised to be back before their daughter arrived. Letters came when they could, video calls on Wednesdays when the satellite connection held. And always, the fear that lived in the back of her throat, the fear that one day the knock on her door wouldn't be him coming home, but men in dress uniforms carrying folded flags. Maverick's head lifted from where he lay beneath the table. The dog was small, 15 pounds of tan and white fur, 2 big ears that never quite learned to stand up straight. Garrett had found him 3 years ago, shivering beside a dumpster in Seattle, ribs showing through matted fur. The vet said he was maybe 6 months old then. Mixed breed, probably would never get much bigger. Garrett had carried him home anyway, had fed him, trained him, loved him with the same fierce intensity he brought to everything. Now Maverick stood body tense, a low growl rumbling in his small chest. Elena set down her brush. "What is it, boy?" The growl deepened. Maverick's eyes fixed on the window facing the lake, his small body rigid with attention that spoke of something primal, something bred into dogs over 10,000 years of partnership with humans. The recognition of threat. Elena rose slowly, one hand supporting her belly, and moved to the window. The lake stretched out gray and choppy under November clouds. The nearest neighbor was 2 miles down the shore. The road into town was gravel unmarked, easy to miss if you didn't know where to look. That was how Garrett's grandfather had wanted it when he'd built this cabin in 1968, isolated, peaceful, a place where the noise of the world couldn't reach. But now that isolation felt different, felt like exposure. 4 boats cut across the water toward her dock. Not fishing boats, not the lazy pontoons the summer tourists rented. These were sleek, expensive, the kind of watercraft that cost more than most people made in a year. They moved with purpose, 4 black arrows aimed directly at her small slice of shoreline. Elena's heart began to pound. She reached for her phone thumb, hovering over Garrett's name in her favorites. But what would she say? That boats were approaching, that she had a bad feeling Garrett had enough to worry about. She wouldn't add to his burden with paranoia. The boats reached her dock. Men stepped out. 4 boats, 3 men each, 12 in total. No, not men going fishing. Men wearing designer clothes that had no business being on a Montana lake in November. Men who moved with the casual confidence of people who'd never been told no in their lives. Leading them was someone Elena recognized. Donovan Cross, 27 years old. Son of Victor Cross, who owned half the commercial property in 3 counties. She'd seen him around town, at the grocery store, at the diner. Always with an entourage, always loud, always taking up more space than he needed. He'd sent letters, 3 of them over the past 6 months, each one an offer to purchase the Stone property. Each one with a higher number. The last one had been for $850,000. For a cabin there Guerri's grandfather had built with his own hands. For land that had been in the Stone family for 57 years. For the place where Garrett had proposed to her on a summer night with fireflies dancing over the water. Elena had burned all 3 letters. Now Donovan Cross was walking up the path to her front door, and somehow she knew that this time he hadn't come to negotiate. Maverick's growl had turned to a continuous low rumble, like distant thunder. The small dog positioned himself between Elena and the door, hackles raised, teeth bared in a way she'd never seen before. The knock came hard. Demanding. Not the knock of a neighbor asking to borrow something. The knock of someone who expected the door to open immediately. Elena's hand went to her belly. The baby kicked again, as if sensing her fear. She could not answer. Could pretend she wasn't home. But the windows were lit. Her car sat in the driveway. And through the glass beside the door, she could see Donovan Cross staring directly at her. Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, 8 months pregnant and 2 miles from help. Elena opened the door. Donovan smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Behind him, his 11 companions fanned out across her porch, her yard casual as predators, who knew their prey had no escape. Mrs. Stone, his voice carried the smooth polish of expensive schools and a life without consequences. I hope we're not interrupting. My husband isn't home. Elena kept her voice steady, kept one hand on the doorframe, the other on her belly, protective, ready to slam the door if she had to, though she knew it wouldn't matter, knew that if these men wanted in a locked door wouldn't stop them. Yes, we know. Commander Stone is currently deployed. Won't be back for another 3 months at least. Donovan's smile widened, which is why now seemed like a good time for us to have a conversation. A real conversation, without his interference. Maverick's growl deepened. The small dog took a step forward, placing himself directly between Elena and the stranger. Donovan glanced down at the dog. Cute? Is it supposed to be intimidating? He's protective. Elena's hand moved to Maverick's collar. She could feel the tension vibrating through his small body, could feel his muscles coiled like springs ready to launch. Mr. Cross, I've answered your letters. The property isn't for sale. See, that's where we have a misunderstanding. Donovan stepped forward. Not inside yet, but close enough that Elena could smell his cologne, expensive, overpowering, chosen to announce wealth. My father doesn't accept no. It's not in his vocabulary, and it shouldn't be in yours either. This land has been in my husband's family for 3 generations, and my father has been buying lakefront property for 3 decades. He owns 18 parcels on this lake. Your little cabin is the last holdout, the last obstacle to a development project worth $40 million. Donovan's voice hardened. Do you understand what I'm saying, Mrs. Stone? You're standing in the way of $40 million. Behind him, the 11 men shifted, not overtly threatening yet, but the message was clear. We're here, we're many. You're alone. Elena's thumb found her phone in her pocket, found the emergency button Garrett had programmed before his last deployment. One press, and it would call him automatically no matter where he was, no matter what he was doing. But what could Garrett do from 8,000 miles away? The offer is generous, Donovan continued. $850,000 for a property that's maybe worth $300 on a good day. That's profit. That's a smart business decision. That's the difference between being intelligent and being stubborn. I'm not selling. You haven't talked to your husband about this, have you? Donovan pulled out his phone, scrolled through something. Commander Garrett Stone, Navy SEAL, currently with Team 5. Location classified. He looked up. Here's what I think, Mrs. Stone. I think you're out here alone. I think you're scared, and I think you're making decisions without really understanding the consequences. Maverick lunged. The small dog moved before Elena could react, before she could grab his collar or pull him back. 15 pounds of fury and loyalty and absolute conviction that the man on the porch was a threat that needed to be stopped. Maverick's teeth found Donovan's ankle. Donovan screamed, high, shocked. The sound of someone who'd never experienced real pain inflicted by something he considered beneath him. He kicked. His expensive boot connected with Maverick's ribs. The dog flew, hit the porch railing, yelped a sound that cut through Elena like a knife through flesh. You little... Donovan's face twisted. Blood seeped through his designer jeans. Get that thing off my property. This is my property. Elena lunged for Maverick. The dog was trying to stand, legs shaking, but his small body positioned itself between her and the men. Still protecting, still refusing to surrender. One of Donovan's companions stepped forward, tall, thick through the shoulders, holding a baseball bat that he'd pulled from somewhere. No! Elena threw herself over Maverick. The bat came down. Pain exploded across her back. White hot, shocking in its intensity. Elena gasped, curled tighter around Maverick, felt the small dog trembling beneath her. Get her off the dog. Donovan's voice. Cold now. The veneer of civilization completely gone. I want to watch it die. Hands grabbed Elena, pulled her away from Maverick. She fought, kicked, but 8 months pregnant against men. 3 times her size was no fight at all. They lifted her like she weighed. Nothing held her as she screamed. Maverick tried to stand. Blood matted his fur. One leg wouldn't hold weight, but he was snarling, snapping at the air, trying to reach his owner. The bat came down again, the crack of wood against bone. Maverick's yelp, Elena's scream. The small dog collapsed. His chest rose and fell, shallow, rapid. Blood pooled beneath him. But his eyes stayed locked on Elena, loyal to the last, refusing to look away. Stop, Elena's voice broke. Please, please, stop. Donovan knelt beside her. His face was very close. His breath smelled of whiskey. Are you ready to sign? Yes, yes, anything, just please. Show me the documents. One of the men produced a folder, official-looking papers, deeds, transfer documents, all prepared in advance because they'd known she would sign. Had known that everyone breaks eventually. Donovan held them in front of her face. Sign at the bottom, all 3 copies. Elena's hand shook as she reached for the pen. She looked at the signature line, at her name typed in neat letters, at the space where her agreement would end everything Garrett's family had built. Her thumb was still on her phone in her pocket. She pressed the emergency button. Somewhere 8,000 miles away, a phone began to ring. Elena's hand moved across the paper. But she wasn't signing her name. She was writing 4 words in letters she made sure would be clear. Go to hell, Donovan. She finished the last letter just as her phone connected. Donovan snatched the papers. His face went red as he read what she'd written. You little Elena. Garrett's voice tinny through the phone in her pocket. Elena, what's wrong? Donovan froze. Understanding dawned on his face. He grabbed for Elena's pocket, but she twisted away. And in that moment of distraction, Maverick, broken bleeding, Maverick lunged one more time. The small dog's teeth found Donovan's hand. Drew blood. Drew a scream. Who is this? Donovan ripped the phone from Elena's pocket, held it to his ear. His smile returned, ugly, now triumphant. Commander Stone, I presume. Elena could hear Garrett's voice sharp with command demanding answers. Your wife is learning a valuable lesson, Donovan said into the phone, about property rights, about what happens when people stand in the way of progress. He pressed the phone closer, made sure the microphone was pointed toward where Elena sobbed on the porch. Can you hear her crying, Commander? Can you hear your pathetic little dog whimpering? If you touch her, Garrett's voice even through the phone's small speaker carried deadly promise. You're already touching her. Donovan laughed. What are you going to do about it from 8,000 miles away? By the time you get home, if you get home, this will all be a distant memory. He ended the call, dropped the phone, crushed it under his boot. The plastic and glass splintered. The screen went dark. Elena's only connection to her husband destroyed. Now then, Donovan turned back to Elena. Where were we? A siren wailed in the distance. Everyone froze. Someone called the cops, one of Donovan's companions said. That's impossible. The nearest neighbor is... I don't care where they are. I hear sirens. Donovan looked at Elena, at Maverick, at the approaching sound of law enforcement. This isn't over. Not even close. My father owns the sheriff. He owns this whole county. And when you're sitting in an interrogation room being called a liar, remember that I gave you a chance. He turned a gesture to his men. They moved back toward the boats, casual as tourists who just finished a pleasant visit. Donovan paused at the dock. Your husband is coming for you, I understand that. But here's the thing, by the time he arrives, you'll be gone. This property will be my father's, and no one will remember your name. The boats roared to life, cut back across the water. Within minutes, they were gone. Elena sat on her porch, Maverick dying in her arms, blood soaking into her dress. The sirens grew louder, but she wasn't listening. She was remembering the sound of Garrett's voice, the terror in it, the rage. Her husband was coming, and Donovan Cross had no idea what he'd just awakened. 8,000 miles away in a military compound whose exact location was classified by 3 separate government agencies, Commander Garrett Stone stood in the communications tent with a phone in his hand that had gone dead. He'd heard everything, every scream, every plea, every moment of his wife being beaten, while he stood powerless on the other side of the world. The phone in his hand cracked. He was gripping it so hard the plastic housing had split. Sergeant Wade Holland appeared at his side. 15 years of service. 4 tours together. The kind of friendship forged in blood and fire and shared nightmares. What happened? Garrett's voice came out hollow, empty. The voice of a man whose worst fear had just materialized. Elena. Someone's attacking Elena. What? Where, Papa? Home, at the cabin. Garrett's hands were shaking. He'd faced enemy fire without flinching. Had called in airstrikes, danger close without hesitation. Had pulled wounded teammates out of kill zones while bullets carved the air around him. But this was different. This wasn't an enemy he could see, a threat he could neutralize. This was 8,000 miles of helplessness crystallized into 43 seconds of his wife begging for mercy. I have to get home. You're in the middle of a classified operation. I don't care. Holland grabbed his arm. Garrett, listen to me. We're 4 hours from extraction, minimum. If you walk out now, you're looking at a court-martial. Then court-martial me. And what good will you do Elena from a military prison? Holland's voice hardened. Think, use your training. What did you hear? Garrett forced himself to breathe, to step back from the edge of rage and think tactically. Multiple hostiles, at least three, probably more. One named Donovan, demanding she sign papers. Property dispute. Your cabin. Grandfather's been in the family 57 years. So this is about real estate. It's about someone thinking they can hurt my family and walk away. Garrett's eyes met Holland's. I heard her screaming Wade. I heard Maverick. His voice broke. They were beating our dog. Holland was quiet for a moment. Then he pulled out his own phone. Okay, here's what we're going to do. I'll contact the team stateside. Get someone to check on Elena. Meanwhile, you talk to Hayes. Get emergency leave authorized. Hayes won't authorize. He will when I tell him what's at stake. Your wife, your unborn child, a home invasion. Holland's expression hardened. Any commanding officer who doesn't authorize emergency leave for that is going to have to explain himself to a lot of people. Garrett forced himself to nod, to think, to plan. This was what he trained for: operating under pressure, making decisions when emotions scream for chaos. Okay, contact Colt Bennett and Logan Pierce. Tell them to get to Montana as fast as possible. Full surveillance on the cabin. I want to know who Donovan is, who he works for, where he sleeps, what he eats for breakfast. What are you going to do? Garrett looked at his phone, at the picture of Elena on the lock screen. Smiling, happy, safe. A photo from another life before this moment divided his existence into before and after. I'm going to find Lieutenant Commander Hayes. Then I'm going to get on a plane. He paused at the tent entrance. And Holland, yeah. Find out everything about Donovan Cross. Family, friends, business, weaknesses. Garrett's voice dropped to something cold. Something that had no place in peacetime. By the time I land, I want to know what he's afraid of. Because Garrett Stone was about to become that fear. The squad car pulled up to Elena's cabin 23 minutes after the boats disappeared. Sheriff Dale Briggs stepped out. 52 years old, overweight, tired, 23 years with the Pine Ridge Sheriff's Department, 23 years of learning one fundamental truth: you don't cross the Cross family. He found Elena on the porch steps. Her lip was split. Her eye was swelling. Blood stained her dress, some of it hers, some of it from the small dog that lay unconscious in her arms. Mrs. Stone, Elena looked up. Her eyes were red from crying but fierce, unbroken. They attacked me, 4 boats, Donovan Cross and 11 others. Briggs felt his stomach drop. Donovan Cross. Of course it was. The spoiled son of the county's most powerful man with a history of violence that never quite made it into official reports. I know who he is, Elena continued. I know who his father is, and I don't care. He beat me. He kicked my dog. He tried to force me to sign away my property. Ma'am, those are serious allegations. They're not allegations, they're facts. Briggs looked at her injuries, at the blood on the porch, at the small dog barely breathing in her arms. 23 years of compromises crystallized into this moment. He could do his job, could investigate properly, could arrest Donovan Cross and watch his career implode when Victor Cross made a phone call. Or he could do what he'd always done: look the other way, file a report that would gather dust, protect the powerful and hope the weak learn their lesson. I'll need you to come down to the station, make a formal statement. I need to take my dog to a vet first. I'm sure the dog can wait. He can't wait. Elena's voice hardened in a way that made Briggs take a step back. He protected me. While 4 grown men beat me, a 15-pound dog stood between them and me. He's dying because he tried to save my life. Her eyes met the sheriff's, not pleading, demanding. So no, he can't wait. Briggs shifted uncomfortably. I'll call ahead to the vet. Have them expect you. Thank you. Elena moved toward her car. Briggs watched her go. Something about this woman bothered him. Most people, when they heard the Cross name, they backed down, apologized, pretended it didn't happen. This woman looked like she was preparing for war. Mrs. Stone, Elena paused. I'm going to give you some advice. Off the record. Briggs walked closer, lowered his voice. The Cross family has been in this county for 4 generations. They employ 300 people. They donate to every charity, every church, every campaign. They have connections, deep connections. And what's your point? My point is that whatever happened here today, you might want to think carefully about how you report it. Think about whether it's worth making enemies of the most powerful family in 3 counties. Elena stared at him for a long moment. Then she smiled. It wasn't pleasant. Sheriff, let me tell you something about my husband. He spent 12 years in the most dangerous places on earth. He's eliminated threats that would give you nightmares. And the one thing he loves more than his country is his family. She opened her car door, placed Maverick gently on the passenger seat. The small dog's chest rose and fell, shallow, fighting for every breath. So when you're warning me about making enemies, Elena continued, maybe you should warn the Cross family instead, because Donovan Cross just threatened a Navy SEAL's pregnant wife. She started the engine. And where my husband comes from, that's a declaration of war. The veterinary clinic sat on the edge of Pine Ridge, a single-story building that had weathered 40 Montana winters. Dr. Patricia Morgan had run it for 30 years, seen everything from horses with colic to barn cats mauled by coyotes. But when Elena Stone burst through the door carrying a small dog soaked in blood, her own face battered and swollen, her pregnant belly pressed against torn fabric, even Patricia paused. Please, Elena's voice broke. Please help him. Well, Patricia took Maverick immediately. The small dog's breathing was shallow, rapid. His eyes were glassy with shock and pain. Blood matted his tan and white fur, turning it dark and sticky. What happened? Men, they attacked us, beat him with a baseball bat. Patricia's hands moved with practiced efficiency, checking vitals, assessing damage. Cracked ribs, internal bleeding likely, possible head trauma. She looked at Elena. And you need to go to a hospital. I'm not leaving him. Mrs. Stone, I'm not leaving. Patricia saw something in the young woman's eyes. Not just fear, not just desperation. Something fiercer, something that would not bend. Then sit down. I'll do everything I can. For the next 3 hours, Elena sat in the waiting room while Patricia worked to save Maverick's life. She didn't move, didn't eat, didn't take her eyes off the surgery door. Her hands rested on her belly, feeling the baby kick each movement, a reminder of what she had to protect. Her phone was destroyed, crushed under Donovan's boot. But the call had connected. Garrett had heard. He knew. And he was coming. Elena closed her eyes, let herself remember the last time she'd seen her husband in person. 3.5 months ago, standing in this same parking lot. He'd held her for a long time, his hand on her belly, feeling their daughter move. I'll be back before she's born, he'd promised. I'll be here. I know you will. If anything happens, anything, you call me. I don't care where I am or what I'm doing, you call. She'd called. And even 8,000 miles away, even in the middle of whatever classified operation he was running, he'd answered. The surgery door opened at 7:43. Patricia emerged, scrub spotted with blood, face exhausted, but smiling. He's stable. 2 cracked ribs, a concussion, more bruises than I can count. But he's going to make it. Elena burst into tears. Can I see him? In a few minutes, he's still coming out of anesthesia. Patricia sat beside her. Mrs. Stone, I've been a vet for 30 years. I've seen dogs run into traffic for their owners. Seen them fight off bears, coyotes, things twice their size. She paused. What your little dog did today, standing his ground against grown men, that's not something you train. That's love. He protected me when no one else would. I heard about what happened. The whole town's talking. Patricia's voice dropped. They're saying you attacked Donovan Cross. Elena's head snapped up. What? The Cross family is already putting out their version, saying you went crazy, attacked Donovan when he came to make a legitimate business offer, saying your dog bit him unprovoked. That's a lie. I know. Patricia met her eyes. I've known the Cross family for 30 years. I've treated their horses, their hunting dogs. She didn't elaborate, didn't need to. Be careful, Mrs. Stone. Very careful. My husband is coming home. I heard, a Navy SEAL. Patricia nodded slowly. That might help, or it might make things worse. The Cross family doesn't like being challenged, and they really don't like losing. They haven't lost yet. No, Patricia stood, but I have a feeling they're about to. 28 hours after the phone call, Garrett Stone's boots hit American soil. Fort Bragg, North Carolina. From there, a military transport to Great Falls, Montana. 8 hours in the air, fighting exhaustion and rage in equal measure. Lieutenant Commander Hayes had granted the emergency leave. 72 hours. After that, Garrett would need to return or face formal charges. 72 hours to cross a continent, assess the threat, and neutralize it. Wade Holland met him at the airfield in Great Falls with a black SUV and a duffel bag. Update, Garrett said, throwing his pack in the back. Elena's at the cabin. Maverick's stable at the vet released this morning against Dr. Morgan's advice. No arrests yet, but Sheriff Briggs took her statement. Holland pulled onto the highway, headed north toward Pine Ridge. Colt and Logan are already on site. Full surveillance established. What do we know about Donovan Cross, 27, son of Victor Cross, who owns Cross Development Corporation? Father's worth approximately $200 million, most of it in real estate and construction. Holland handed over a tablet. Donovan's been arrested twice for assault. Both times charges were dropped, protected by daddy's money and political connections. Garrett scrolled through the file. Photos of Donovan at clubs at parties always surrounded by hangers-on. Young, handsome in a way that spoke of a life without consequences. The kind of face Garrett had seen before on the sons of warlords, on the nephews of cartel leaders. Men who'd never been told no, who believed their family name made them untouchable. The father's worse, Holland continued. Victor Cross has been systematically buying up lakefront property around Whispering Pines for 15 years. Anyone who refuses to sell tends to have accidents. How many accidents? 17 that we can document. House fires, car crashes, business bankruptcies, all targeting people who stood between Cross and a property he wanted. Holland's jaw tightened. Your grandfather's land is the last piece he needs for a $40 million resort development. So this isn't personal, it's business. To them, maybe. To us, Holland looked at Garrett. They beat your pregnant wife, nearly killed your dog, made you listen from 8,000 miles away. He paused. How's that feel? Garrett didn't answer. Couldn't. Because putting what he felt into words would give it shape, make it real. And right now, he needed that rage formless and contained. Needed it as fuel, not as a wildfire. The SUV ate up the miles. Great Falls to Pine Ridge. 217 miles of Montana highway mountains rising in the distance. November sky heavy with the promise of snow. Garrett's phone buzzed. A text from Logan Pierce. Surveillance active. No hostiles on property. Elena safe. Safe. The word felt hollow. His wife had been beaten on her own porch. Their dog nearly killed. Their privacy invaded. Their home violated. Safe was a concept that no longer existed. The cabin appeared around a bend in the gravel road. Small, weathered wood, smoke rising from the chimney. It looked exactly as it had when Garrett left 3.5 months ago, but everything was different now. Logan Pierce stepped out from behind a tree, tactical radio in hand. Mid-30s, lean. The kind of face that forgot easily, which made him perfect for intelligence work. Cameras are up, motion sensors active, secure comms established. He gestured toward the tree line. Colt's got overwatch from the ridge. Nothing gets within 500 meters without us knowing. Elena, inside, hasn't left except to check on the dog. Garrett moved toward the cabin. His legs felt strange, like he'd forgotten how to walk on ground that mattered. In war zones, every step was tactical, measured. Here, walking to his own front door, his hands were shaking. The door opened before he reached it. Elena stood there, backlit by lamplight, one hand on the frame, the other on her swollen belly. Her face was a map of violence, split lip, black eye bruises along her jaw. But her eyes, God, her eyes were fierce and bright and absolutely unbroken. Garrett. He caught her as she ran to him, held her, his arms wrapped around her, like he could shield her from everything that had already happened. She sobbed against his chest, her whole body shaking. 8 months of pregnancy and 43 seconds of terror finally released. I'm here, he whispered. I'm here now. They hurt Maverick. They hit me. They said they'd come back. They won't touch you again. Ever. She pulled back, looked up at him. Tears streaked her bruised face. You didn't see them, Garrett? Donovan Cross, I know who he is. Garrett's hands cupped her face, thumbs gentle on her bruises. I know everything about him. His family, his friends, his weaknesses. His eyes met hers, and I know exactly what I'm going to do. What? First I'm going to see our dog. Then I'm going to take you home. And then, he paused. Then I'm going to pay Donovan Cross a visit. Elena grabbed his arm. Garrett, the sheriff, is protecting them. The whole town is. I don't care about the sheriff. I don't care about the town. His voice dropped to something cold. Something that belonged to Commander Stone, not the gentle man who'd proposed beside this lake on a summer night. The only thing I care about is standing in front of me. You, our baby, Maverick. Everything else is just obstacles. He kissed her forehead, gentle, at odds with the violence in his eyes. Show me where they hurt you. The examination took 20 minutes. Garrett documented every bruise, every cut, every mark. His hands were steady, professional. The hands of someone who'd performed field triage on wounded teammates under fire. But inside, something was breaking. These weren't combat injuries. These weren't the random violence of war. This was targeted, personal. His wife beaten in her own home by men who thought family money made them immune to consequences. Your ribs, he asked, fingers gentle on her side. Bruised, I think, not broken. The baby. She's okay. kicking constantly. Dr. Morgan checked, said, everything looks normal. Elena's hand covered his. I was so scared, Garrett. Not for me, but for her. When that bat came down, all I could think was, don't. Garrett pulled her close again. You survived. She survived. That's what matters. Maverick saved us. If he hadn't attacked Donovan, if he hadn't given me those few seconds. I know, I heard. Garrett's voice cracked. I heard him yelping when they hit him. Heard you screaming, and I couldn't do anything. But you did. You're here now. 28 hours too late. You came, that's what matters. They sat in silence, holding each other, the fire crackling in the stone fireplace Garrett's grandfather had built. Outside, night was falling. Logan and Colt maintained their watch. Wade was running background checks and building case files. Garrett's phone buzzed. A message from Wade. Cross Mansion 1847, Lakeside Drive. Minimal security. Donovan home. Victor out of town until tomorrow. Garrett read it twice. Felt something settle in his chest. A decision crystallizing into action. I need to go out for a while. Elena pulled back. Where? To send a message. Garrett, they think they can terrorize you and walk away. They think money and connections make them untouchable. His eyes hardened. They're about to learn how wrong they are. Don't do anything that gets you court-martialed. I won't. Garrett. She grabbed his hand. Promise me. Our daughter needs her father. I need you. Promise me you'll come back. He looked at her, at the bruises on her face, at the fear she was trying to hide, at the strength that had kept her fighting even when 15 pounds of diet was her only defender. I promise. The Cross Mansion sat on 300 acres of prime lakefront property. Iron gates, security cameras, a driveway that wound through manicured grounds like a statement of wealth. Garrett pulled the SUV up to the gate. A security guard approached Young, probably early 20s, trying to look professional. Can I help you? I'm here to see Donovan Cross. Do you have an appointment? No, but he'll want to see me. Garrett smiled. It wasn't friendly. Tell him Commander Garrett Stone is here, the husband of the woman he beat yesterday. The guard's face went pale. He retreated to his booth, made a call, spoke rapidly. When he returned, his expression had shifted from professional to concerned. You can go in, sir. Mr. Cross will meet you at the main house. The gate opened. Garrett drove through, past gardens that cost more to maintain than most people's annual salary, past fountains and sculptures and tennis courts, the kind of wealth that didn't just buy things, but bought people, bought silence, bought immunity, but it couldn't buy what was coming. Donovan was waiting on the front steps. He looked different from the photos, younger in person, softer. The bandage on his ankle where Maverick had bitten him was visible beneath expensive jeans. Garrett parked, got out, left Wade in the driver's seat, engine running. Commander Stone? Donovan tried to sound confident. Failed. I've heard a lot about you. I doubt that. My father said you might come by. He wanted me to tell you that what happened at your cabin was a misunderstanding. Garrett's voice was quiet, conversational, the kind of calm that came before violence. Is that what you were going to say? Things got out of hand. My friends and I had been drinking. We went to make a business offer and... Let me tell you what I understand, Donovan. Garrett stepped forward, close enough to smell his expensive cologne, close enough to see the fear he was trying to hide. You went to my home. You attacked my wife. You beat my dog. You threatened my unborn child. He took another step. Donovan backed up. And then you laughed about it, bragged about it, called me from 8,000 miles away to make sure I heard my wife screaming. That's not, we didn't. I heard every second, Donovan, every word, every scream, every moment of you hurting the people I love. Garrett's eyes never blinked. Do you know what that feels like, to be that powerless? Look, we can work this out. My father is willing to... I'm not talking to your father. I'm talking to you. Another step. You have one chance. One. Walk away from my family. Publicly apologize to my wife. Drop all interest in our property, and I'll let this end peacefully. Donovan's fear flickered, morphed into something uglier. Arrogance. The confidence of someone who'd never truly faced consequences. You think you can threaten me in my own house? He laughed. My father has connections you can't imagine. Politicians, judges, people who can make your life very difficult. I've spent 12 years making my life difficult in places where your father's money means nothing, against enemies who would eat you alive. This isn't Afghanistan, Commander. No, it isn't. Garrett smiled, cold, empty. In Afghanistan, I had rules of engagement. Here I don't. The front door opened. A man stepped out. Older, silver hair, tailored suit. The kind of man who'd built an empire by crushing anyone in his way. Victor Cross. Commander Stone, I think that's enough. Garrett didn't turn, kept his eyes on Donovan. Mr. Cross, my son made a mistake. I'm prepared to make it right. Victor descended the steps, every movement calculated. Name your price, medical bills, property improvements, a settlement for your wife's distress, whatever you want. I want your son to face charges for assault. That's not going to happen. Then we have nothing to discuss. Commander, Victor's voice hardened. You seem like an intelligent man. So let me explain how this works. I own this county. The sheriff answers to me. The district attorney owes me his career. Every judge within 100 miles has received my campaign contributions. He spread his hands. You can't win this fight. The best you can do is accept my offer and move on with your life. Garrett was quiet for a moment. Then he reached into his pocket, pulled out a USB drive. You know what this is? Victor's eyes narrowed. Should I? It's 3 years of financial records, property transfers, payments to county officials, evidence of 17 suspicious accidents connected to your development projects, 200 million in money laundering through offshore accounts. He turned the drive over in his fingers. My team compiled it in 24 hours. Imagine what we'll find in a week, a month, a year. Victor's composure cracked, just for a second. Where did you get that? It doesn't matter where I got it. What matters is where it goes next. Garrett pocketed the drive. Right now, copies are sitting on secure servers. If anything happens to me, my wife, my dog, or my property, they go to every federal agency with jurisdiction. FBI, IRS, DEA, DOJ. You're bluffing. I'm a Navy SEAL, Mr. Cross. We don't bluff. The silence stretched between them, father and son on the steps of their mansion, a lone soldier on the gravel driveway. The kind of standoff that defined who people really were when the mask came off. You should leave now, Commander, Victor said finally. Before this conversation goes somewhere we'll both regret. I was just about to say the same thing. Garrett turned to Donovan. Remember what I told you. One chance. After that, I stopped being patient. He walked back to the SUV, got in. Wade pulled away, gravel crunching under the tires. In the rearview mirror, Garrett watched the Crosses standing on their front steps. Father furious, son terrified. Good. Let them be afraid. Let them understand what it felt like to be threatened in their own home. How'd it go? Wade asked. About how I expected. They think their money makes them untouchable. Does it? Garrett thought about Elena, about Maverick, about the daughter he hadn't even met yet growing in his wife's belly while her mother fought for survival. No, he said quietly. It doesn't. His phone buzzed. A message from Logan. Movement on the lake, multiple vehicles. Looks like they're mobilizing. Garrett felt something cold settle in his stomach. Get back to the cabin, now. What's happening? They're not going to wait. They're coming tonight. The SUV accelerated, racing back toward Whispering Pines, toward Elena. Toward the fight that had been inevitable from the moment Donovan Cross decided that a pregnant woman and a small dog were obstacles to be removed. Behind them in the Cross mansion, phones were being dialed. Orders were being given. Men were being hired. The message had been sent. But the Cross family had sent one back. And this time they weren't coming with baseball bats. They were coming with professionals. Night fell over Whispering Pines Lake like a curtain, dropping on the last act of something that could no longer be undone. Garrett made it back to the cabin at 8:52, the SUV's headlights cutting through darkness that felt heavier than it should, thicker, pregnant with the promise of violence. Elena met him at the door. What happened? I delivered the message. Now we wait to see if they're smart enough to listen. Garrett moved past her, went to the window facing the lake. Logan status. The radio crackled. Logan's voice came through calm and professional. 3 vehicles just left the Cross estate, heading toward town. Could be nothing. Or it could be everything. Garrett turned to Wade. How long to get more people here? Colt's already on the ridge with Overwatch. I can have 2 more operators here by midnight, maybe 4 by dawn. Wade checked his watch. But that's cutting it close if they move tonight. They'll move tonight. Victor Cross didn't build an empire by waiting. Garrett pulled out his phone, scrolled through contacts. I need to make a call. He stepped onto the porch, dialed a number he'd hoped never to use outside official channels. Agent Rachel Foster answered on the second ring. Stone, it's late. I know, I need a favor. Last time someone from your unit asked for a favor, I ended up investigating a cartel in Juarez. Her voice was dry, but there was curiosity underneath. What's going on? How much do you know about Victor Cross? Silence. Then Rachel's voice changed, sharpened. Cross Development Corporation. I've had a file on them for 2 years. Money laundering, construction, fraud possible, RICO violations. But he's connected. Really connected. Every time I get close, someone higher up tells me to back off. What if I could give you everything, complete financial records, witness testimony, evidence of 17 suspicious deaths over 30 years? I'd say you have my attention. What's the catch? The catch is that his son beat my pregnant wife yesterday, nearly killed my dog, and I think he's about to try again, but with professionals this time. Rachel was quiet for a moment. Where are you, Whispering Pines Lake, Montana. I'm in Billings, 4 hours out. He heard movement on her end keys jingling. Send me everything you have. If it's as good as you say, I can have a team there by morning. Morning might be too late. Then don't do anything stupid before I get there, Commander. The last thing I need is a dead Navy SEAL complicating my investigation. I'll try. That's not reassuring. Garrett ended the call, stared out at the lake. Moonlight painted the water silver and black. Beautiful. Peaceful. A lie covering the violence that was coming. Behind him, Elena stood in the doorway. You think they're coming tonight? I know they are. How many? Garrett turned to face his wife. She deserved honesty, deserved to know what they were up against. Logan intercepted communications. Victor hired a private military contractor. 40 men, heavy weapons. They're being paid to make sure we disappear. Elena's hand went to her belly, to their daughter who knew nothing of the world's cruelty yet. 40 men. Against 3 SEALs and a woman who's already proved she doesn't break. Garrett crossed to her, took her hands. I won't lie to you, Elena. This is bad. This is as bad as it gets outside a war zone. Then what do we do? We fight smart. We use terrain, technology, training. He pulled her close. And we make sure that if they want to hurt my family, they have to go through every lesson 12 years of war taught me. I'm scared, Garrett. So am I. Every time, every mission, every firefight. He pulled back, met her eyes. But fear doesn't control us. Love does. And I love you more than I fear anything they can do. What if? No what ifs. We fight for each other. That's all that matters. The hours crawled toward midnight like wounded things. Garrett converted the cabin into a defensive position. Wade reinforced the doors with furniture and steel brackets pulled from the shed. Colt maintained overwatch from the ridge thermal scope, scanning the tree line every 30 seconds. Logan established a perimeter of motion sensors and cameras, each one feeding to a tablet that showed the property in segments. Elena sat in the bedroom that would become their daughter's nursery, assembling a go bag. Clothes, documents, photos, the things you grab when home stops being safe and becomes just another place to survive. Maverick lay at her feet. The small dog had been released from Dr. Morgan's care that afternoon against medical advice. Patricia had said he needed another week of observation. But Elena had insisted. Had said that if something happened tonight, she wanted her family together. All of them. The dog was wrapped in bandages, his breathing labored, one eye swollen shut. But when Garrett knelt beside him, Maverick lifted his head weakly, recognition flickering in his one good eye. His small body trembled with the effort, but he managed a single tail wag before exhaustion claimed him again. Good boy, Garrett whispered. You did your job. Kept her safe when I couldn't. He scratched behind Maverick's 2 big ears. Now you rest. Let me handle this part. At 11:41, Logan's voice crackled over the radio. Movement, South Shore, multiple boats. Looks like 8, maybe 10. Garrett moved to the window. Through the darkness, he could see running lights cutting across the water. Not the casual passage of fishermen. The purposeful approach of men with a mission. Wade positions. Elena safe room. Now. Garrett. Elena, please. He turned to her and she saw in his eyes what he couldn't say. That if this went wrong, if he failed, he needed to know she'd tried. That their daughter would have a chance. Please. She nodded. Moved to the small interior bathroom they'd reinforced with steel plating and supplies. Maverick followed, limping but determined. The door closed, locked from inside. Garrett checked his rifle. Loaded, safety off. Then he waited. The boats reached the dock at 11:53. Men poured out like ants from a disturbed nest. Not 12 this time. Not the casual violence of spoiled rich kids with baseball bats. These were professionals, body armor, tactical weapons, night vision, the kind of gear that cost more than most people made in a year, deployed by men who'd done this work in a dozen countries under a dozen flags. Logan's voice came through the radio. Count is 32 on approach. Thermal showing 8 more in reserve boats half-mile out. Total 40 hostiles. 40, just like Foster warned. Victor Cross wasn't taking chances this time. The mercenaries spread out with military precision, surrounding the cabin, cutting off retreat routes. They moved in silence, hand signals, only the choreography of men who'd rehearsed this dance in places where mistakes meant body bags. Their leader stepped forward, tall, scarred, the kind of face that had seen too much and stopped caring. He raised a megaphone. Commander Stone, I know you're in there. His voice was professional, almost bored. My name is Cole Ramsey, former Delta Force. I'm here because Victor Cross paid me to deliver a message. Garrett didn't respond. Watched through the scope of his rifle as Ramsey gestured to his men. You've got 2 options, Ramsey continued. Option 1, you walk out with your hands up. We take you into custody. Your wife gets medical attention. This ends without bloodshed. What's option 2? Garrett called back. Option 2 is we come in and get you. And when we're done, no one will find enough of this cabin to build a birdhouse. Ramsey lowered the megaphone. I'd recommend option 1, Commander. I've got 40 men. You've got, 3, maybe 4. Does it matter? Not to me. I get paid either way. Ramsey checked his watch. You've got 2 minutes to decide. Garrett keyed his radio. Colt, you have the shot. Negative, too many bodies. Can't get a clean line on the principal. Logan, cameras are recording everything, but boss, even if we go public with this, we're outnumbered 10-1. Wade appeared at Garrett's shoulder. Could try to hold him off until Foster gets here. 4 hours is a long time to hold against 40 professionals. Could try. Garrett looked around the cabin, at the furniture his grandfather had built by hand, at the walls that held 3 generations of memories, at the bedroom door that held his wife and his unborn daughter and a 15-pound dog who'd already given everything. An idea crystallized. Risky, crazy, the kind of plan that only worked in movies or when you had nothing left to lose. Logan, is the live stream ready? You want to go live now, but the mama, right now, maximum distribution, every platform. Boss, that'll expose our tactics, show our positions. It'll also expose them. 40 armed men attacking a family home. Let's see how Victor Cross's connections hold up when 500,000 people are watching in real time. Wade grinned. That's either brilliant or the stupidest thing you've ever suggested. Probably both. Garrett turned to the window. Do it. Logan's fingers flew across his tablet. Stream is hot, pushing to Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, adding geotags and emergency tags. Algorithms picking it up, keywords, armed assault, Navy SEAL, pregnant woman, triggering emergency protocols. Viewer count, 12,000, now 18, 32, algorithms accelerating distribution. Outside, Ramsey raised the megaphone again. Time's up, Commander. What's it going to be? Garrett stepped onto the porch, unarmed, hands visible. The kind of calculated risk that made sense only when you'd seen death enough times to know it was patient. Mr. Ramsey, before we do this, I want you to know something. I'm listening. You and your men, every single one of you, you're being broadcast live right now, to the internet, your faces, your weapons, your tactical positions. Garrett gestured to the cameras Logan had hidden in the trees. Say hello to the world. Ramsey froze. His head swiveled, looking for the cameras he should have spotted. His men shifted, uncertain. Logan viewer count, 50,075. Pushing notifications to news aggregators now. Associated Press bot just grabbed the feed. Garrett raised his voice. Right now, approximately 75,000 people are watching this. In 5 minutes, it'll be 200,000. By morning, millions. Every news network will have the footage. Every social media platform. Your names, your faces, everything. You're bluffing. Pull out your phone, search Whispering Pines assault. See for yourself. Several mercenaries did. Garrett watched their faces change as they found the streams. Watched realization dawn that this wasn't a quiet operation anymore. This was public, documented, permanent. Ramsey's radio crackled. A voice Garrett didn't recognize, but the tone was unmistakable. Panic. Ramsey, we have a problem. The operation is compromised. Full media exposure. CNN just went live with the feed. Abort. Abort now. Sir, we can still. I said abort. All units fall back. This operation is terminated. Logan's voice over the radio. 180,000 viewers, trending #1 nationally. It's everywhere, boss. Ramsey lowered the megaphone, stared at Garrett across the 20 yards separating them. His men were already moving toward the boats, the professional urgency of operators who recognized a blown mission when they saw one. This isn't over, Commander. Yes, it is, because now everyone knows. The FBI knows, the DOJ knows, every federal agency with jurisdiction is watching. Garrett's voice hardened. You and your men have two choices. Leave now and maybe avoid federal charges. Or stay and guarantee that you'll spend the next 20 years in a cell. The boats roared to life, engines churning the dark water. Within 3 minutes, they were gone, leaving only wakes that lapped against the dock. Garrett stood on the porch, adrenaline still singing in his veins, and watched the darkness swallow them. Boss, Wade appeared at his side. That was either the bravest or the most reckless thing I've ever seen. Probably both. Elena's asking if it's safe to come out. Give it 5 more minutes, make sure they're really gone. But even as he said it, Garrett heard the bathroom door unlock. Elena emerged pale and shaking, Maverick limping beside him. She crossed the room and wrapped her arms around him, buried her face in his chest. I heard everything. The whole thing. It's over. They're gone. For now, she pulled back, looked up at him. Her eyes were wet but fierce, unbroken. Garrett, I can feel her, the baby. She's been kicking the whole time like she knows something's wrong. He placed his hand on her belly, felt a small flutter of movement. Their daughter, fighting to exist in a world that was already trying to hurt her. A sharp pain crossed Elena's face. She gasped, hand going to her lower abdomen. Elena, it's nothing, just Braxton Hicks probably. But her face was pale, too pale. Another contraction, stronger. Elena doubled over. That's not Braxton Hicks. Garrett caught her as her knees buckled. Wade, get Dr. Morgan on the phone now. Headlights swept across the cabin. For a moment, his hand went to his rifle, but then he saw the markings. FBI. Agent Rachel Foster stepped out of the lead SUV, followed by 15 federal agents in tactical gear. She took in the scene, the cameras still recording the defensive positions, Elena clearly in distress. Commander Stone, I see you waited for me. Barely, my wife needs medical attention. Foster gestured to her team. Medic now. Then to Garrett, we monitored the live stream from the road. Very creative. Also very illegal in about 12 different ways, but we'll discuss that later. An FBI medic rushed forward, guiding Elena to sit. Ma'am, I need you to breathe. How far apart are the contractions? 5, maybe 4 minutes. Elena's face was tight with pain. How far along are you? 8 months, 34 weeks. The medic looked at Foster. We need to get her to a hospital. This baby's coming, whether we're ready or not. Hospital's 45 miles, roads are icy. Foster pulled out her radio. I'm calling for a medevac helicopter. No time. Dr. Patricia Morgan's truck screeched into the driveway. The vet emerged, medical bag in hand. I was monitoring the police scanner, heard the situation. She knelt beside Elena. Mrs. Stone, remember me. I delivered Maverick back to health. Now let's make sure your daughter gets here safely too. You're a veterinarian, Foster said. I'm also a former Army medic. Delivered 17 babies in forward operating bases in Iraq. Patricia's hands moved with practiced efficiency, checking Elena's vitals. She's in active labor. Cervix is already 6 centimeters dilated. We're not making it to a hospital. Garrett felt the world tilt. She's not due for 6 more weeks. Stress can trigger premature labor. The attack, the siege tonight, her body's been through trauma. Patricia looked up at him. Commander, I need you to focus. Your wife needs you present, not panicking. Elena grabbed his hand, squeezed hard enough to hurt. Garrett, I'm scared. I know, baby, but you're the strongest person I know. You fought off 12 men. You protected our dog. You wrote, go to hell instead of signing their papers. He kissed her forehead. You can do this. Another contraction. Elena screamed. The next 3 hours existed outside of time. Patricia converted the cabin's bedroom into a makeshift delivery room. Foster's team maintained a perimeter, not against mercenaries now, but to give privacy and space. Wade and Colt and Logan stood guard outside, protective uncles to a baby not yet born. Maverick refused to leave. The small dog positioned himself at the bedroom door, still bandaged, still weak, but absolutely certain that his pack needed him. Inside, Elena labored. Garrett held her hand, whispered encouragement, felt more helpless than he'd ever felt in combat. In war, he had skills, training, actions he could take. Here, all he could do was bear witness to pain he couldn't stop. Push, Patricia commanded. That's it, Elena. One more big push. Elena screamed, a sound that came from somewhere primal and ancient and absolutely human. And then another sound, a baby crying. She's here, Patricia said, voice thick with emotion. You have a daughter, Commander. Hope Elizabeth Stone entered the world at 2:47 in the morning, 6 weeks early, but absolutely perfect. 5 pounds, 3 ounces. Dark hair like her mother, fingers that immediately gripped Garrett's thumb with startling strength. Patricia placed the baby on Elena's chest. Hello, Hope. Welcome to a family that will fight the world for you. Garrett knelt beside the bed, one hand on his wife, one touching his daughter, and felt something inside him crack open. Not break, transform. He'd thought he understood love before, thought he'd known what it meant to protect something. He'd known nothing. She's beautiful, Elena whispered, exhausted but radiant. She looks like you. She has your grip, Elena smiled through tears. Poor kid. Maverick nosed his way into the room, moved slowly to the bed, stood on his hind legs, still favoring the broken ribs, and sniffed the baby carefully. Then he licked her tiny hand. Hope's fingers closed around his ear. And Maverick, 15 pounds of absolute loyalty, settled beside the bed to guard this new member of his pack. Patricia finished checking both mother and baby. Elena's stable. Hope's vitals are good, but she should be in a NICU for observation. She's small for gestational age. The helicopter just landed, Foster called from outside. We can have her at Great Falls Medical in 20 minutes. Both of them, Garrett said. Elena and Hope, together. Of course, Commander. As the medics prepared Elena and Hope for transport, Garrett stepped outside. Dawn was breaking over Whispering Pines Lake, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Beautiful, indifferent to the violence and wonder of the night. Foster appeared at his side. Your wife is remarkable. I know. The evidence you provided combined with tonight's footage is enough to move on Victor Cross immediately. We're executing warrants within the hour. What about Blackwood? Foster pulled out her phone, pressed play. A recorded phone call, Blackwood's voice cold and certain. I want them gone. Both of them. The commander and his wife. Make it look like an accident. Foster ended the playback. We've been monitoring Blackwood's communications for 6 hours. He just ordered the murder of American citizens. We have him. When do you move? My team in D.C. is breaching his residence in... She checked her watch. 3 minutes. As if on cue, her phone rang. She answered, listened, smiled. Senator Harlan Blackwood is in federal custody. He was arrested in his bathrobe at 6:03 a.m. Eastern. Garrett felt something settle in his chest. Not relief exactly, not yet, but the beginning of it. The helicopter lifted off, carrying Elena and Hope towards safety and medical care. Garrett watched until the lights disappeared into the brightening sky. What happens now? Wade asked. Now we finish it, Garrett said. Every piece, every connection, everyone who enabled this. 3 months later, the trial of Victor Cross, Donovan Cross, Sheriff Dale Briggs, and 17 other defendants began in federal court. The prosecution had everything: financial records, witness testimony footage of the mercenary siege, and Victor Cross himself, who'd flipped the moment his lawyer explained the evidence against him. Victor took the stand on day 11. Wearing an orange jumpsuit instead of tailored suits, he looked diminished. Mortal, he spoke for 6 hours about money laundering, bribes, intimidation, and Senator Blackwood's role, coordinating a 3-state corruption network. For 20 years I paid and he protected, Victor testified. Judges he recommended, politicians he controlled. Every time someone stood in my way, one phone call to Blackwood made the problem disappear. The prosecutor leaned forward. Until the Stone family. Until them. Victor's voice was hollow. They wouldn't disappear, wouldn't sell, wouldn't be intimidated. And when I went to Blackwood for help, he told me to eliminate them. Permanently. Garrett sat in the gallery, Elena beside him, Hope asleep in her arms. The baby had spent 2 weeks in NICU, but was thriving now. 6 pounds healthy, absolutely loved. Maverick lay at their feet, still limping slightly, but healing. The small dog had become a minor celebrity. Newspapers called him the 15-pound hero. Children's books were being written about him. But to Garrett's family, he was just Maverick. Loyal, brave, home. The verdicts came on a Tuesday afternoon. Senator Harlan Blackwood guilty on all counts. 35 years federal prison, no possibility of parole. Victor Cross guilty. 12 years eligible for parole and 6 due to cooperation. Donovan Cross guilty. 8 years plus $2.7 million in restitution to 17 families. Sheriff Dale Briggs guilty. 15 years. Badge stripped. Pension forfeited. 8 other law enforcement officers guilty. Combined sentences totaling 93 years. Cole Ramsey, the mercenary leader, had cut his own deal, provided recordings of Blackwood's orders. testified about the network of private contractors doing illegal work for corrupt officials. In exchange, he got 10 years instead of life. Garrett watched Donovan Cross's face as the verdict was read. Watched the arrogance finally drain away. Watched him understand that actions had consequences, even for people born into money. Elena's hand found his. Squeezed. "It's over," she whispered. "Yeah, it is." 6 months after the trial, Hope Elizabeth Stone was 6 months old, healthy and happy and absolutely adored. She'd taken her first steps early just like her father had. Strong, determined, refusing to stay down. The cabin on Whispering Pines Lake had been rebuilt by the community. 47 families, everyone who'd suffered under Cross Development Corporation's intimidation, had shown up with hammers and saucers in a determination to prove that what Victor Cross tried to destroy couldn't be broken. The new porch was wider, the dock reinforced. And at the end of that dock, mounted on a post carved by Ezra Whitfield, a 79-year-old Korean War veteran who'd lost his son to a cross accident 30 years ago, burned a lantern, old-fashioned oil, the kind that needed tending. It burned every night, a symbol visible across the lake, a promise that this community would never again let darkness go unchallenged. Garrett stood on that dock on a September evening, Hope strapped to his chest in a carrier, watching the sun set over the mountains. Elena appeared beside him, carrying 2 mugs of tea. Maverick limped along behind her slower than he used to be, but still determined to be wherever his family was. "She's asleep," Elena asked. "Finally, took 3 laps around the property, but she's out." They stood in comfortable silence, the kind that came from surviving something together, from learning that love was stronger than fear, that community was stronger than corruption. "I've been thinking," Elena said, "about what you said before, about finding purpose after war." "Yeah. What if we helped others find it too, veterans who are struggling, who come home and don't know how to be civilians anymore?" Garrett turned to look at her. "What do you have in mind?" "A program matching vets with rescue dogs, animals who've been abandoned or abused just like some of these men have been abandoned by the system." Her eyes were bright with the idea. "We have the land, we have the knowledge, and we have Maverick as proof that the smallest, most broken creatures can become the strongest." Garrett looked down at the small dog. Maverick stared back, one eye still slightly clouded from that day's violence, but the other clear and steady. "Guardian Canine Initiative," Garrett said slowly. "Pair veterans with dogs who need homes. Teach both of them that broken doesn't mean useless, that surviving is just the first step to healing." "Exactly." Dr. Morgan said she'd help. The old Cross Development headquarters was seized by the government, sitting empty. We could convert it. Garrett thought about Wade and Colt and Logan, all struggling with civilian transition, about hundreds of veterans he'd served with who came home to find their combat skills useless, their wartime reflexes dangerous, about giving them what Maverick had given Elena: purpose, protection, love that asked for nothing and gave everything. "Okay," he said, "let's do it." 1 year after the attack, the Guardian Canine Initiative occupied the former Cross Development headquarters. Victor Cross's old office, with its lake view and expensive furniture, had been converted into a training facility. Conference rooms where deals destroyed families now hosted group therapy. 15 dogs, 12 veterans, all of them learning to heal together. Wade Holland ran tactical training. Colt Bennett handled administration. Logan Pierce built the technology infrastructure. And Garrett taught what he'd learned the hard way, that courage wasn't the absence of fear, that strength wasn't about size or weapons, that sometimes the bravest thing you could do was stand your ground. On the anniversary of the attack, the community gathered at the stone cabin, not to mourn, to celebrate. Ezra Whitfield gave a speech about how silence protected corruption, how one family's refusal to be silent freed them all. Dr. Patricia Morgan presented Hope, now walking, now talking in short sentences, with a puppy. Small, mixed breed, tan and white fur, 2 big ears. "For when she's old enough," Patricia said, "every girl should have a dog like Maverick." Rachel Foster attended off-duty. She'd been promoted after the Blackwood case, now ran organized crime division for the Northwest. But she'd taken the day off because some cases were more than just cases. Sheriff Sarah Mitchell, the 32-year-old former MP, who replaced Briggs, presented Garrett and Elena with a plaque. In recognition of exceptional courage, Garrett and Elena Stone, who stood against corruption and won Pine Ridge County. Thanks you, the lantern on the dock burned as the sun set. 47 families gathered. 15 rescue dogs played with 12 veterans. Hope took her first steps across the new porch while Maverick, older, slower, but still loyal, walked beside her. Elena found Garrett at the dock as the gathering wound down. Hope was asleep in her arms, Maverick at her feet. "What are you thinking?" she asked. Garrett looked out at the lake, at the lantern burning steady, at the reflection of light on dark water. "I'm thinking that a year ago I was 8,000 miles away listening to you scream absolutely powerless." He turned to her. "And now I'm here. We're here. 17 families have their lives back. 12 veterans have found purpose. And our daughter will grow up in a world where people like Victor Cross can't terrorize communities unchallenged." That's a lot to think about. It's a good thing to think about. He pulled her close, careful of Hope sleeping between them. "Thank you. For what? For not giving up, for standing between Maverick and that bat, for writing 'Go to hell' instead of signing." He kissed her forehead, "For being braver than any SEAL I've ever served with." Elena smiled. "Maverick was the brave one. I just followed his example." They looked down at the small dog. Maverick opened one eye, saw his family's safe, closed it again. His tail wagged once, slow, content. "Do you think it's really over?" Elena asked. "The legal part is. Blackwood's in prison, Victor's in prison, Donovan's in prison. The network's dismantled." Garrett paused. "But the work isn't over. There are more families like ours, more communities held hostage, more veterans who need help coming home. So we keep fighting. We keep building. Fighting starts change. Building makes it last." The lantern flickered in a breath of wind, then steadied. Its light reached across the lake, touching the far shore where 17 rebuilt homes stood as testament. Hope stirred, made a small sound. Maverick immediately lifted his head, checking. When he saw she was just dreaming, he settled. "He still thinks he needs to protect her," Elena said. "He always will. It's who he is." Garrett scratched behind Maverick's ears. 15 pounds of absolute conviction that his family matters more than his safety. That's not training. That's love. They stood together in the gathering darkness, watching the lantern burn. Somewhere in a federal prison, Senator Blackwood was learning that power without integrity was just weakness by another name. Somewhere else, Victor Cross was remembering the empire he'd built on intimidation and watching it crumble in retrospect. And Donovan Cross was understanding slowly, painfully, that privilege didn't excuse cruelty. But here on this dock, on this lake, in this moment, none of that mattered. What mattered was the family that refused to break, the dog that refused to retreat, the community that refused to stay silent. What mattered was the light burning in the darkness. Garrett pulled Elena and Hope closer. Maverick pressed against his leg. "Let's go inside," he said quietly. "It's getting cold." They walked back to the cabin together. Their home, their sanctuary, their battlefield, and their victory. Behind them, the lantern burned on, a light in the darkness, a promise kept. A story that would be told for generations in Pine Ridge, Montana, about the family that stood against corruption, about the 15-pound dog that defended them, and about the community that rose up when one family showed them it was possible to win. The door closed. The lantern burned. And on Whispering Pines Lake, peace settled like the first snow of winter, cold and clean and absolutely earned. Somewhere in training facilities across 3 states, 12 veterans were learning to trust again. 15 rescue dogs were learning they were safe. And the Guardian K9 initiative was just beginning a mission that would help hundreds more. Elena finished her children's book, Maverick the Brave, about a small dog who proved that courage had nothing to do with size. It became a bestseller. Every penny of profit went to funding the Guardian K9 program. Hope grew, strong, fearless, protected by a small dog who'd decided on the day she was born that this tiny human was his to guard. When she was 3, she told her father she wanted to be a SEAL when she grew up. "Why's that, sweetheart?" Garrett asked. "So I can protect people, like you protected Mommy, like Maverick protected everyone." Garrett looked at Elena, at their daughter, at the small dog sleeping at Hope's feet. "You know what, Hope? You're already protecting people, by being brave, by being kind, by showing others it's possible to stand up to bad things. Even if I'm small, especially if you're small," he gestured to Maverick. "That dog is 15 pounds. The men who hurt Mommy were 200 pounds each, 12 of them. But Maverick didn't care about 7. He cared about what was right." Hope thought about that. "I can be brave even though I'm little. You can be brave because you're little, because you have to be braver to stand up when you're small." Years passed. The Guardian K9 initiative expanded to 5 states. 47 veterans placed with rescue dogs. Success rate 93%. PTSD symptoms reduced. Suicide rates dropped. Lives rebuilt. Garrett officially retired from the Navy at rank of commander. Received the Defense Distinguished Service Medal for his 12 years of service. used his retirement ceremony to announce a scholarship fund for children of veterans killed in action. Elena's book, she wrote 7 more after Maverick taught millions of children about courage, kindness, loyalty. Each one featured a small hero standing against impossible odds. Maverick lived to be 17, old for a dog, but then he'd always been exceptional. He watched Hope grow from infant to toddler to girl, stood guard at her bedroom door every night, walked her to the school bus every morning until his legs wouldn't carry him anymore. When his time came, he died peacefully surrounded by his family. Elena held him. Garrett stroked his ears. Hope, now 14, whispered thank you for protecting her mother, for teaching her what bravery meant, for being the best dog who ever lived. They buried him on a hill overlooking Whispering Pines Lake, erected a stone marker. Maverick 2023 to 2040, 15 pounds of pure courage. He stood when others ran. He loved without condition. He showed us what it means to be brave. The lantern on the dock still burns every night, tended now by Hope, who learned from her parents that some lights must never go out, that some promises must be kept forever, that darkness is always waiting, and the only defense is people willing to stand with light in their hands. On quiet evenings, when the lake is calm and the stars are bright, 3 generations of stones sometimes gather on that dock. Garrett and Elena, Hope and her younger brother Maverick Stone, yes, they named him after the dog, and eventually Hope's own children. They tell the story about the attack, about the small dog, about 40 armed men who retreated from a live stream, about a corrupt empire that fell because one family refused to be silent. And always, always, the story ends the same way. Remember, Garrett tells his grandchildren, courage isn't about being big or strong or having weapons. Courage is standing up when you're scared, fighting when you're outmatched, protecting what you love even when it seems impossible. Like Grandma did, the youngest asks. Like your grandmother did, Elena confirms. Like a 15-pound dog did. Like your grandfather did from 8,000 miles away. Like we all did, Garrett adds. Because courage isn't something one person has. It's something a community shares. And when enough people decide that wrong won't be tolerated, that corruption won't be accepted, that fear won't win, that's when everything changes. The lantern burns, the lake reflects stars. And in Pine Ridge, Montana, 47 families sleep soundly in homes that were almost stolen. 12 veterans wake without nightmares. 17 children grow up knowing their parents' sacrifices weren't in vain. Because one woman stood her ground. Because one dog refused to run. Because one seal came home. And because sometimes, just sometimes, the good guys win.